I think that simply because someone is more intelligent doesn't necessarily mean that they're right. Now, what do I mean by this? Take an example. When a baseball bat and a baseball together cost $1.10. The bat is $1 more than the baseball. How much are they? Now, if your answer was, oh, the ball is 10 cents, then you're wrong, right? Think again. Consider the question once more. In other words, what I'm trying to say here is that people will have an initial thought that they're hugely going to stick with and they're hugely not going to question. And I think to be right and to be just and to truly have the truth, you need to question this. And I don't think that intelligent people are infallible in their non-questioning of themselves, right? Perhaps they're even more fallible because when you have a high level of intelligence and you're constantly receiving praise and you're learned and you're told to trust yourself in most things, such as math and your sciences and things of that nature, and you're quite skilled at most skills, then perhaps you even develop a level of hubris in your mind, right? So intelligent people, sure, they may have the right answer, but they may also initially have the wrong answer and be fallible to the unique position that they're born into, culturally, religiously, ethically, whatnot, right? And are thus simply significantly better at articulating themselves and at formulating new arguments. And I think that this is why so many profound and great thinkers throughout our lives, throughout the entirety of mankind, have disagreed with one another in spite of their shared intelligence, right? So to someone who is intelligent, how do you combat this? To someone who is not intelligent like myself, who isn't naturally particularly gifted, then how do we combat this? How do we think twice? Well, as with many things, it is, in short, metacognition. You need to constantly be considering, okay, how do I feel about this? Now, have I fully thought this through? Or can I perhaps think again? Can I perhaps think of a time after that? Am I right and just here, right? Another important thing is to leave the echo chambers that most people find themselves in, Not all men, not 66% of men are rapists, and not so like, and every woman isn't bad, and every woman isn't a cheater and whatnot, right? So you gotta leave the echo chambers that you may find yourself in. That was a current day gender wars example, but you also have things like politically, of course, where there is much more tribalism on either side nowadays, I'd say, in such a fashion that, take an example. If I really, really love oranges, and I have a good friend, now this friend, he's a pretty clever guy, he's good at arguing for his perspective, and he also loves oranges, right? And so I think, wow, this guy is so smart, and he's articulate, and he can formulate the best examples that I've ever heard, and he can argue damn well for oranges, right? Now, I've never had a beetroot, but my friend has, and my friend, he hates beetroots. And, I might actually also one day partake in a beetroot. I might love it, or I might hate it. But either way, I think that if I'm simply trusting someone who I perceive as intelligent and trusting their opinion over what potentially may be my own, which disagrees with them, then there I'm making a strong error. So all this is to say that many people rely on their tribal ideals in people that are the highest in their given perspective, you know. Be it very good apologetics, be it someone like Trent Horn, or be it someone like Alex O'Connor, right? You know, perhaps since they are extremely good at arguing what they are arguing for, then perhaps that one might be more compelled to trust them, or this could even go the opposite way. You know, I think that I'd surely be less likely to agree with subject if my first exposure to it is from someone like Alex O'Connor, who I disagree with intimately, than if my first contact with this belief would be with, I don't know, Trent Horn once more, you know? So you gotta consider this, and you gotta try to make your own perspective up on things. Create your own way of seeing the world. But also be sure to not over rely on yourself. You must have a circle around you that is willing to say, "Hey Sam, you're fucking being stupid here, right? You're being a little bit of a dumbass on this one, right?" An example from my personal life would be with a good buddy of mine. Now this buddy of mine, I agree with him a lot of things. We both lean more towards conservative politics. We both are Christians, and we both are, I suppose, in sorts a reaction to the progressive politics of the 2010s and early half of the 2020s, right? In such a way that we agree on a lot of things. We're both very much very similarly circumstanced. Some of his friends more intelligent than me, so he's quite good at debates, and I'm also quite good at debates. It's something that naturally caters to myself, right? And this friend, I brought him out to dinner for my birthday. Well, my mom brought him out to dinner, and some other buddies, and in this he mentioned black people. Touchy subject, you know. Always gotta tread light here, right? And he said that he thought that though they were not lesser for this, though they were certainly just as equally deserving of rights, and they're proper human beings deserving of respect and created in the image of God, that he believed that black people had naturally lower IQs, that they had evolved to a certain extent. And hearing this, me and the two other guys that were not him, that were sat at the table, like, "Whoa, bro, I disagree with you." And so I brought up things like the flying effect, which is perhaps the strongest piece of evidence for different race groups having similar natural IQs, right? And I brought up the unique circumstances that surrounds Africa as a continent, and black people, particularly in the U.S. And we disagreed, and we fought over this. We didn't fight over it, we debated over it for a number of days, right, through text, and I think that having friends like me, you know, like give myself a little medal here, right, that you need to have friends that are willing to disagree with you and keep you on track. Now, also, more importantly, perhaps more importantly, I should say, is that when you're debating someone who has a seemingly radical view on things, you don't want to interrogate them. You don't want to vilify them from your perspective and make it seem like you vilified them from your perspective. You want them to have the impression like they're actually being treated like a human being. I forget who it is exactly. I'll try to find it, and I'm actually not. I'll put it in the comments if I do find it, or better yet, the description. But black man, he goes to a KKK member, to a dragon, I believe it was, and he simply asks questions. He wants to know, why do you hate me for the color of my skin? And he doesn't necessarily vilify this man. Obviously, he disagrees greatly with him, and he doesn't necessarily try to argue and debate him nonstop. Instead, he humanizes himself to this man. He talks to him. He says, well, I disagree with you, gently and kindly, and with respect, perhaps more respect than this man deserved. And eventually this dragon took off his robes. Well, pause. Eventually he left the KKK, and eventually, over the last few decades, he's commenced, I believe, more than 200, more than 50 or more than 200, one of those two, small difference there, to take off their KKK robes and to be unradicalized. And I think that this is there's a very notable lesson to be learned here. Christ says to turn the other cheek, and this means to humanize yourself, humanize your perspective. Now this doesn't necessarily go with the example that I had brought up. I doubt that this black man would start hating black people after a while, but I think that you also must offer them the respect of being able to have your mind changed, so that they might offer you the respect of being able to have their mind changed on a given subject, right? When I was debating with my friend, I don't think that black people have naturally lower IQs. I've never thought that, and I don't think I'm ever going to, because that's where there is no scientific backing for there to be a large disparity, naturally speaking, between different races. But I was still willing to have my mind changed. I was still willing to say, hey, I give you the benefit of the doubt. You're a pretty smart fellow. So argue this to me. And he essentially said, oh, well, with God as our author, he permitted us to be very adept for our given environments, right? And we talked and we debated, and he brought up like whoever found the double helix structure in well, I'm speaking French right now, in DNA. He found, whoever found that, he disagreed, or he agreed with my buddy here. And I asked him, oh, well, what arguments did he use? And he said, I'll get back to you on that. He never got back to me on that. But I still offered him this respect. And I think that my buddy, I believe he's changed his perspective. I haven't asked him directly. And I think that he was willing to change his mind because I didn't vilify him perhaps as much as he was deserving to. So always think twice, look from another perspective, and try to expose yourself to different ideas. Expose yourself to atheism time to time, expose yourself to Christianity from time to time, to Islam, to Judaism, Buddhism, whatever, right? As they say, disagreeing idea a day keeps the echo chambers away. God bless, my friends.